Hello again. Today I'm going to talk about something that really has been bugging me. And I've been thinking about it a good bit. There's a lot related to it that's been going on in the news, particularly today. I've really sort of wanted to talk about this video, this topic for months, many months. But I just sort of need to get it off my chest. Uh, I was an undergraduate sociology major. That's what my undergraduate degree was. And in that with that degree, what I found was, well, sociology to me just was common sense stuff, and I basically was, as I saw it, was learning uh, verbiage, the official verbiage that goes along with common sense things. And one of those words that I learned the official verbiage that was part of the official verbiage is the word assimilation. Now, and you've seen the image on my podcast screen was of the Borg ship, spaceship, because the Borg, if you remember Star Trek Next Generation, the Borg were coming into the Federation area. The Federation are the people, the humans, and other allied uh, races, and they were coming in and they were taking people and assimilating them, whether they wanted to or not. You had to submit. That's the way it was. No choice. You are going to assimilate. So I want to talk about that some today. Uh, the reason this is important when it comes down to it, in the end, what is going to happen to our country in the next 20 or 30 years? Maybe 50, maybe 100. What is going to happen to it? Because we've already seen that it's so far from what it was. If you're my age, it's just almost black and white in some respects, the changes. Some of them have been good, right? um, the whole integration kind of stuff, which if you'll go online, you'll see it's a very uh, uh, rewarding to go online and see the amount of people who are black who are saying things about how, gosh, what these people are trying to say about us is ridiculous. We are humans, and we have good sense, and we have a good faith, and we don't know what these other folks are talking about. But anyway, freedom of speech is the key. In the long term, freedom of speech. Can you say what's on your mind without getting thrown in jail or beat up or killed? Um, we have and a good example of this is how the whole issue that came out about the Olympics with some of the American Olympic sports people not wanting to be supportive. Some of them never were. Others sort of said things like, "Well, I don't really agree with what the United States is doing, but I'm here to play for me and my family." Well, no, they were there to play for the United States, and that particular guy finally backed that up and said, "Well, no, I'm an American." It's great. It was great to see people singing the uh, Star Spangled Banner, etc. And then there were others who, no, they don't agree with the United States, and they're not respecting the flag and etc. That's their right, and we know that. We don't have to like it. We can maybe not buy the products that the companies that use them as their spokespersons. Maybe we don't buy their products. If you don't, there's things that we can do, but we're not killing them. We're not cutting their heads off. We're not putting them in jail. They have a right to say what they want to say. And then on the other hand, we just saw the other day where the Iranian soccer team, the girls who were down in Australia and did not sing their national anthem, which is not sung in Persian but is sung in Arabic. And there's a lot of Persians who don't really appreciate this Arabic takeover of their country, and they weren't singing their anthem. Well, that got to be a pretty big deal with spokespeople on the TV saying, "Hey," from Iran saying, "Hey, these people ought to be dealt with very severely. They're traitors for not singing a national anthem." We got football players and everything all over for the last several years not standing for the national anthem and everything. We know a lot of us don't like that, but that's their choice, even though it seems idiotic. But we don't have to worry about people killing us or putting us in jail. So this is an important thing, assimilation. When I was first early in life, I worked for the Arthritis Foundation for a short while, and there was some women in my office. One of them was a New Yorker, a real New Yorker. She was curt, short in speech, not very didn't have a lot of grace to her, not from our Southern viewpoint, right? And then there was another lady in our office who was she was a very sensitive kind of person. So we had a human resource problem, a real dilemma in that office because the curt, brusque New Yorker, which we know someone right now who seems to be that way often in the White House, was offensive to this sensitive lady. Uh, so, but this New Yorker came from a different culture. And I remember growing up, it was a big deal when somebody was a Yankee. There was a Yankee came to town, came through South Georgia or moved to South Georgia. They were a different kind of person. Uh, so, but they're not that much different than us, right? I mean, historically, the United States for the people who came from Europe, first you basically had, especially in the 13 colony area, Englishmen and Irish and Scottish. Well, these people all come from a similar culture. Some of them might have been Catholic. Most of them were Protestant. Some might not have really had any faith. They just were coming, but they came from the same culture. So there were less things to be offended by. Maybe one person didn't like the other person getting drunk and singing all night next to them or something like that. I don't know. I can relate to that, however. And then you had French and Germans and later on Italians who all came to the New World. And of course, uh, not every culture does fit together expertly or exquisitely, excuse me. So the French have French Quebec. They don't want to assimilate, right? They didn't want to be part of the assimilation process. And you have an issue. You've had this issue that seems like a silly issue to me in Canada with these people that didn't want to assimilate, right? Who want to speak a different language. A problem. Well, but for the most part, all these folks all came from a society, a culture that was Christian, and so they had the same values and things like that. Today, I experience. I've done other email podcasts where I might have talked about this, but I experience cultural shock where I live because what used to be what you might call a redneck area now is multicultural to the extreme and very dominant with people from Hispanic cultures. Uh, when I moved into my neighborhood 30 years ago, uh, there might have been a Hispanic person here. Now, if a house sells, the probability is selling to a Hispanic person. When I walk down the street, I hear people speaking Spanish, which is sort of is a culture shock for me because I used to walk down my streets all the time, take my walks, and I might hear some kids yelling or something like that, but there weren't people sitting out in front of their house rattling on in Spanish. Now, I understand why they're doing that. One, if you've got, they're probably hiring Spanish people to work for them. If they got a yardman, it's very probable it's going to be a Hispanic person who may not speak a lot of English, or it's just more comfortable to speak in Spanish. So I get that. I get that. I see parents talking to their children, which I'm sure in the long run will be very beneficial for their children to be be able to use both languages. Uh, but my initial thought is, well, why don't you speak English? So everybody in your family is speaking English, and it's probably because grandmother and grandfather don't speak English well. My neighbor, very nice folks, invited me to a party at their house, and I went, and it was a big party full of all of their family. Everybody, they're Puerto Ricans. Everybody was speaking Spanish. I sat down next to the old grandfather, sat down next to him. He couldn't speak English. Only The only person who could speak English to me besides my neighbors, as far as I could tell, or was willing to, was like a brother-in-law who happened to be non-Hispanic, right? And I didn't. It felt sort of wrong for me to just sit there and talk to that one guy the whole time. That seemed, I wasn't comfortable doing that because I want to be friendly with everybody. So, that just wasn't a comfortable situation at all. Not having any, I had nobody to talk to. Out of 20 people, nobody to talk to. Anyway, so that, we have those kind of problems whenever you have other cultures coming in. Now, again, I've lived in the South. I lived in Atlanta. We had Greek festivals. There were German festivals that would happen in different places. I'm all for having a festival. And I don't know what happens with Columbus Day kind of festivals or whatnot, but I think it's great to celebrate a culture. As long as you're not celebrating every day of the week or don't have your own year or month or whatever, we're all Americans. That's what I think is the important thing. So, because we need to all be part of the same culture. It's a really important thing for being an American, to being a unified country, to being a people. And we're headed in a different way right now. Now, what has got me particularly concerned as I've seen things happening all over the United States is the impact of Islam on the United States. I don't have any problem with Islamic people. And you probably don't either. You probably have friends, you may well have friends who are Islamic. Of course, historically, that's not an issue, right? Not for people who come from a Christian faith. Not for people who come from what has been the United States for the last 200 years, where our ancestors came for religious liberty. So if somebody wants to be a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness or a Catholic or whatever, Baptist, whatever, do your thing, right? Leave us alone. We'll leave you alone. You go to your house of worship, okay? Now, one of the things that quickly sort of seemed problematic to me, like I hear now, there's a town in Texas where they're starting to call out from the mosque the prayers 5 times a day. Now, this is something that's not culturally correct, okay? In fact, if we think about it, until there was a modern microphones to be PA systems, which are not even 100 years old, people didn't have the ability to, and people weren't, excuse me, if you didn't like hearing somebody calling out, you could live, 5 blocks away and maybe hardly hear the imam calling, or whoever was the caller, calling out the prayer time, okay? Maybe a block or two away, you didn't hear it, okay? My point is, it seems pretty intrusive to me to have anybody, because I forget about it being a prayer call. I don't like the people driving down the street playing their boom boxes and their radios, or woofers in their radio, shaking the windows to my house as they drive by. Why are you? I don't like the guy who drives up next to me when I'm sitting at the red light and boom, 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 or whatever the music is. Right? I don't care if it's rock or if it's salsa. I don't appreciate it because I'm in my car. I'm not in your car. What are you doing? Okay. Or the guy on the motorcycles who drive down the road doing that, Put on some earphones. Let the rest of us alone, okay? Anyway, that's not assimilating. Now, part of that is for regardless to what your national heritage is, a part of that is just being a peacock. A lot of it is young men trying to get attention, right? And they're just peacocks. But anyway, so that is a problem to me as far as assimilation. These people aren't assimilating. They don't have to put on a microphone and do that. There's his mosque, or I guess their mosque, around my community. As far as I know, they don't have microphones blasting out. Okay, but see what happens is, and I learned this long ago when I was just a kid, is that you get enough of one particular group of people together and you got problems. And this is what happened I went to school. I had friends who were black. We all got along. As far as I never saw us having a problem getting along for the hardly anything. Um, I didn't see people making racial slurs to the black people in my class. Okay, there weren't a lot, admittedly. And then the school system right adjacent to us had large communities of black people, and so they had people. Therefore, they had a group of people, and all you needed is to have that instigator come in and stir up trouble. And they had riots and stuff. You know why? We're look just a few miles away. We're getting along fine. What's going on with you people? Okay, so that's my point. You get a big enough community of a particular group of people, and now you got a problem because now they want to start expressing themselves to the rest of the world, whether you want it or not. That's where assimilation becomes is a key issue. And we haven't been doing a good job of assimilating in the United States for decades now. We've been letting everybody do whatever the heck they wanted to do. Um, it's a weird thing I just saw on the news today, and this is one of the reasons I got motivated. I saw on the news today that a representative in Virginia has proposed a no gun law, and now Virginia has this. This is new for Virginia. After hundreds of years, there are no guns for any citizens, and so they've passed it, and now it's going to the governor, who is, if you know her, I'm sure she's going to pass it because I think she's not a logical person. But this guy is a guy from, let's see, he came here from Bangladesh. He was born in Bangladesh. So now you could say, well, he grew up in he came, I guess he came here when he was in high school or something. He grew up in the United States. He's gone to United States colleges. He's been exposed to the United States. Unfortunately, he's probably been exposed to people who are crazy and have put crazy ideas in his head. And then he runs for office. Now, he's not from a family of people. You can't say, of course, that, hey, if you come from another country, you can't serve in our government. It probably should be some limitation. But this guy's been here for, 30 years or something. And he was born in 90. So, he's been in our culture for 25 years, 20 maybe. You, would we make a law to say that a guy can't run for office because he's only been here for 10 years or for 25 years? I don't think we would do that. It seems sort of extreme. And certainly we can't be assured that somebody whose parents came here on the Mayflower isn't a silly person who comes up with silly notions. So with all this communistic stuff that's going on, I don't know how long Madami in New York has been here. He might have been here his whole life. I presume he has. And he's got ideas. He's espousing ideas that are pure out dangerous for everybody. It all sounds good. I used to be a pro-socialist person. I get the allure of socialism. I get it. But it's not logical. See, this right here is why I know it's not logical. I've been around long enough to know what's logical. So all this socialism stuff is not logical. That doesn't mean that we don't have corruption that we need to deal with in our country. But that's another subject. I'm talking today about assimilation. And what we have done is, as a man with white hair, I can tell you we need better assimilation. I saw a video of a girl the other day, and she was her little podcast. And she was complaining because she was claiming, hey, my family didn't come here to eat apple pie and watch baseball. If we want to watch soccer or whatnot, then, we're going to do what we want to. We came here to make money for our family. Well, I'm not going to complain about somebody coming to make money for their family. And I'm not going to complain about them liking soccer. I don't know what happened with this girl. If she is purely, maybe she's run into some situations where somebody was giving her a hard time, either because they were jerks or because they were kidding around with her, which I don't know which one might be. But I can imagine somebody say, "Hey, you're supposed to like apple pie and baseball, man. What is this soccer stuff? What is that music you're listening to? You're supposed to like Southern rock. What are you doing? You live here in the South." So somebody could have been just kidding around with her, but clearly she was offended by the way she was talking. The thing is that you don't have to like everything, but at the same thing, you don't need to shove your culture down the neck of the people who you're moving into their neighborhoods, right? That's what assimilation is about, and that goes for I've mentioned this other time. I remember years ago I had a young man who lived in a house over here behind me, and one night he built he got it. His wife left him, and he got drunk. He built a big bonfire in his backyard, and then he got his pickup truck and he came back to his backyard in his pickup truck and started driving through his bonfire. Well, first of all, the bonfire was illegal. It was in a residential neighborhood. It wasn't supposed to be there. This is something that I understand. This kid was young man. He was from the country. Okay, he was a redneck. He was probably used to, look, I used to live on 10 acres of land, plenty of land around me. We could rant and rave and do all kind of stuff on our land. And yes, sometimes people would see us or hear us, but for the most part, you could do something and nobody would maybe notice it, right? Because if you live out in the country in the sticks, you can do things like that. And the sheriff doesn't come to get you or anything like that, right? But, this guy was being crazy. And what if his truck had caught on fire? Of course, he was drunk and doing stupid stuff. But my point is that there was some assimilation that guy needed to do to learn. If you come from the country, you need to learn how you live in a suburban neighborhood. If you come from the suburbs, you got to learn how to live in an urban downtown. If you come from urban downtown, you got to learn how you live in the suburbs. It's that simple, but it's more complicated in the case of when you have a culture who believes that women should do certain things. Now, I just saw another, and this is another reason I did this video. I just saw a video of an interview with some Muslim guys. They were walking down the street demonstrating in support, I guess, of Iran. I don't know. And they have the right to do that. That's all good. And there was a guy interviewing them, asking them, hey, if we got into a war with, if Iraq attacked us, the United States, would you fight with the United States? He said, no. I would go to jail before I would fight for the United States because my book tells me not to do that. Now, if you will look at other down my information, my podcast, my Facebook or my X account, you'll see some questions that you ought to be asking. That these questions ought to be asked to people of that culture, of that faith, so that they can find out what is true and what's not true. But because rational people, now if people are irrational, you can't do anything about them. So these killings, these murders, and the guy ran into a Jewish synagogue the other day, and another guy shot a guy out at Old Dominion, up at Old Dominion. These were Muslims, but from different countries. I don't know that we can do anything about people who are insane. Insane people will find reasons to act out, okay? But if you are a conservative Muslim, like this kid said, as they were interviewed, these were young men, I call him a kid. Another question was, well, what do you think about cutting people's hands off? And he said, well, certainly, yeah, no, cutting people's hands off. We ought to be cutting people's hands off, okay? So this is a culture that has a book that they believe in that tells them to do things that are pretty aggressive. If you know that much about Islam, if a person is I'm a secular Muslim, a secularist who is okay with you living your life and leaving them alone, they're not going to be a problem for you. But if a person is a Muslim who believes the world should be follow Allah, That's a pretty demanding thing. It's demanding of them, and it's demanding of you. And they're not going to assimilate with you. The only way they can assimilate with you is by um, leaving their faith. That's the only way they can do it. So, because we have a European Christian European culture, we have a Christian European um, constitution, and while there are states' rights issues, and certainly Madami is trying to pull some stuff off in New York, and the Muslims in Texas have tried to do some things, but what probably needs to do it happens in the United States before, and I mean in a very quick pace here, is that states need to pass laws that codify whether certain things are acceptable or not. You need to pass this on to other people. You don't have to pass the whole video. Pass the idea along to other people. States need to codify laws that put parameters on things. So, for example, you can have a law that says that no, without getting a permit for an individual performance or activity individually, to be done once, a maximum of once every month or something, or whatever it might be, whatever you think is logical. Then you can't use loudspeakers to promote events or to play, music, etc. So that when a different culture moves into your community, wherever you live in the United States, or the different one moves in, they're going to have to, okay, we got to pipe down what we do. And guess what? If they don't want to live by those laws, then fine. They don't have to move into your community. See? So we need to do something like that. We need to support assimilation, not to be draconian, but just where what seems like logical, does it seem logical to you that a person should not be playing their outdoor woofers at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, I've experienced that multiple times. I don't know why. It's illogical to me. I've lived many years and not experienced that. Okay. When I was at college, young kids would do a lot of stupid things in a dorm, in a college apartment complex. And they weren't doing the right thing. They would do a lot of stupid, obnoxious things, right? But the average person didn't. And certainly by the time you live in a suburban neighborhood, there's certain things you ought not to be doing. There should be laws that are very, codes that really have meat to them, that keep people from doing things that are obnoxious to everybody around them. Anyway, we need to watch out. We're going to get to a point, if we don't assimilate, and assimilation means you see the Borg on Star Trek, they were coming in and making other people assimilate to them. The Federation wasn't making the Borg assimilate to the Federation. The Borg is the people invading, and they were pushing their culture, which was the Borg culture, on everybody else. We need to protect ourselves from that. So, otherwise, you're not going to have any freedom. Unless, as a Christian, I may say, well, I serve God. I am a slave to God, and I find my freedom in that. Okay, that's my choice to be a slave to God, though. See, if you choose to be a slave, that's fine and dandy. If you choose to walk away from Christianity, that is your prerogative. There may be eternal consequences, but you can do that in this world. But when it comes to being a Muslim, if you're a Muslim and you choose to walk away from it, we've heard stories multiple times of men who've killed their sons, their daughters, their nephews, or whatever. Right? It's not a new thing. It's not new. It's happening every day around the world. Anyway, hope this helps you out in some way. We must assimilate. Look for truth, pray for the truth, and you'll get the truth. Have a good day.